Welcome to the Crawcast. I'm your host, George Krawczak, and this is what happened in Week 15 of the NFL season. And if you like this type of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button like it owes you money. Now let's get started. The first game was the Atlanta Falcons versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Falcons won 29-28. So the Falcons won 29-28. The Falcons' leading passer is Kirk Cousins, who threw for 373 yards and 3 touchdowns. Their leading rusher is Bijan Robinson, who had 93 rushing yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was Kyle Pitts, who had 166 yards and 3 touchdowns. For the Buccaneers, their leading passer was Baker Mayfield, who threw for 277 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading rusher is Bucky Irving, who had 60 rushing yards, and their leading receiver is Mike Evans, who had 132 receiving yards. So in this game, this was a really good back and forth game, and Kirk Cousins played absolutely fantastic. And so did Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts deserves credit for finally making it look like he was a good pick after failing all these years. It's not much to say, like, the Falcons are obviously out of the playoffs, so this game really didn't mean a lot, but at least Kirk Cousins played well. Like, I think that deserves a lot of credit, because I think he's kind of saving his career a little bit. Because he was supposed to be one of the best backups in the NFL after he got benched for Michael Penix Jr., and he just simply hasn't played that well. But also, he's just been dominating the Buccaneers. Like, in his, I believe, 3 games against the Buccaneers as a Falcons quarterback, he just played absolutely fantastic. And then the Buccaneers are completely collapsing. I think they were either 5-1 or 6-1 at one point. I think they were 5-1 at one point, and now they're 7-7, completely collapsing. And right now they're tied for the Panthers for the division, and they'll play each other twice in the next 2 weeks. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's inexcusable. The Buccaneers should have won this game. There was at one point where it was a 3rd and 28 and a 2nd and 14, and the Buccaneers just let him go. And I don't know. Like, I don't think Todd Bowles should be necessarily fired yet, because he has been a relatively good coach for the Buccaneers the past several years. But man, this game was just inexcusable. They should have won it, and they need to win it because they're trying to make the playoffs. The next game is the Baltimore Ravens versus the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Ravens won 24-0. So the Ravens won 24-0. Lamar Jackson was their leading passer, who threw for 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading rusher was Derrick Henry, who rushed for 100 yards. And their leading receiver was Zay Flowers, who had 68 receiving yards and a touchdown. For the Bengals, their leading passer was Joe Burrow, who threw for 225 yards and 2 interceptions. Their leading rusher is Chase Brown, who had 53 rushing yards. And their leading receiver is Jamar Chase, who had 132 receiving yards. So in this game, the Ravens just dominated. Like, it's tough because this is kind of what happens is the Bengals defense is terrible, and then Joe Burrow, either he's off or he's on. And in a game like this where he's off, then the Bengals have no shot. The Bengals are just a disaster. Their defense is a disaster. And Joe Burrow, like, I get it, he deserves credit because he's a lot of time elevated his teammates, but we've seen so many inconsistent games. Like, for example, the first, 3 games of the season he played in, he was terrible. And so now he's coming back and he's having a performance like this. Like, again, I get it. In the past, we've seen excellent performances, but he's just been way too inconsistent at this point. And then Lamar Jackson, like, he needs to play better. Like, I get it. He didn't need to do much, but in the little bit he did, he didn't really play that great. And overall, this Ravens team is going to be fighting hard to try to win the division over the Steelers, although I think the Steelers definitely have a major leg up over the Ravens. And it's just tough. So the Bengals are basically out of the playoffs. They're done. And then the Ravens, it's going to be tough for them to make it. We'll see. Well, they're going to have to win the division. Like, there's no way they're making the wild card or like making it off of a wild card berth. They're either winning the division or missing the playoffs. And I think there's a high likelihood they're missing the playoffs. But at least the defense played really good. The past couple of games, the defense of the Ravens hasn't played that great. But yeah, complete and utter disaster for Cincinnati. The next game is the Las Vegas Raiders versus the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Eagles won 31-0. So the Eagles won 31-0. The Eagles' leading passer is Jalen Hurts, who threw for 175 yards and 3 touchdowns. Their leading rusher is Saquon Barkley, who had 78 rushing yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver is Dallas Goedert, who had 70 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. For the Raiders, their leading passer was Kenny Pickett, who threw for 64 yards and an interception. Their leading rusher is Ashton Jeanty, who rushed for 35 yards. And their leading receiver is Brock Bowers, who had 28 receiving yards. Honestly, nothing to say about this game. The Raiders are just a complete and utter disaster. There's nothing positive to say about them. I'd say, definitely the worst team in the NFL. Like, I get it, you got the Titans and you got the Browns and you got the Giants, but I say the Raiders are definitely the worst team. The Eagles, at least they look good and they stop themselves from collapsing, but also I'm not sure how much credit they get because it's against the Raiders, who are terrible. So I got nothing to say. Like, the Eagles look good against a terrible Raiders team, but every single team has looked good against this Raiders team. So that's kind of it. The next game is the Arizona Cardinals versus the Houston Texans, and the Texans won 40-20. So the Texans won 40-20. The Texans' leading passer is C.J. Stroud, who threw for 260 yards and 3 touchdowns. Their leading rusher was Johar Jordan, who rushed for 101 yards, and their leading receiver is Nico Collins, who had 85 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. For the Cardinals, their leading passer is Jacoby Brissett, who threw for 249 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading rusher is Michael Carter, who had 56 rushing yards, and their leading receiver is Trey McBride, who had 131 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. So in this game, the Texans just dominated the entire game, but the biggest news here to me is C.J. Stroud. Granted, yes, it's against the Cardinals, and you'd like to see improvement from him against better teams, but he did play really well because this whole season it's basically been like, okay, the Texans defense is elite and can carry CJ Stroud and the Texans to wins, but can CJ Stroud just play average enough to not blow it for the team? And he largely hasn't done that. He really hasn't played well. And it's been like this the past couple of years where he's been carried by the defense. But he played extremely, extremely well this game. And so if he can keep that up and actually play good with this elite defense, they can actually be a very, very solid team and potentially make a Super Bowl run. Again, I don't really trust CJ Stroud because I need to see more consistency out of him, but overall he played really, really great. And then the Cardinals, they're just disaster. They're gonna need a new quarterback because Kyler Murray seems done there. Got nothing. They don't really. At least Trey McBride looks good. Yeah, the Cardinals are just a disaster, but at least the Texans are playing really well. And if CJ Stroud can keep this up, then they can be a really great team. I just struggle to believe that he can keep it up, but we'll see. The next game is the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Chargers won 16-13. So the Chargers won 16-13. The Chargers' leading passer is Justin Herbert, who threw for 210 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Their leading rusher is Omarion Hampton, who had 61 rushing yards, and their leading receiver was Oronde Gadsden, who had 61 receiving yards. For the Chiefs, their leading passer is Patrick Mahomes, who threw for 189 yards and an interception. Their leading rusher was Isaiah Pacheco, who had 21 rushing yards, and their leading receiver was Travis Kelce, who had 70 receiving yards. So in this game, neither team played that great. It was a very defensive-heavy battle. And here's the big news. The Chiefs lost, so they are out of the playoffs this year. And also the big news is Patrick Mahomes tore his ACL. So this likely means he'll miss the start of next season because it's typically a 9 to 12 month recovery. Luckily, he's a quarterback, so typically quarterbacks can come back a little bit earlier because even though Patrick Mahomes might not be as mobile with his ACL injury, he can come back earlier and just use his arm and really not rush. This just needs to be an opportunity where the Chiefs are a bad team, and hopefully they can use these high draft picks to rebuild the offense. And because Mahomes isn't playing good, but also they have zero running game. The defense is actually playing pretty well. The defense is pretty well, but it's really the running game that they've been struggling with. And so maybe they can use these draft picks to get a running back and revamp the offensive line a bit. For the Chargers, yes, it's good they won. Yes, it's good that their defense looked great, but also the Chiefs' offense really hasn't been playing well, so I don't know how much credit the defense deserves. But the big thing is Justin Herbert and this offense needs to play better. They've been struggling a lot. Like, I think they are a playoff team, but they are not a Super Bowl team. Their defense is decent, but their offense has been struggling so much that I just don't think they can be a Super Bowl team. And I get it. It's the offensive line. Justin Herbert is dealing with the worst offensive line in the NFL, and he deserves credit for that. Like, kind of where you say with Joe Burrow, where Joe Burrow's playing decent with a horrible offensive line. Justin Herbert deserves the same credit, where he's playing with horrible offensive line and still coming out with these wins, and probably playing as good as you can given the situation, but I just think the situation is just too dire to win a Super Bowl. But overall, if they're the Chargers, you gotta be happy with the win. The next game is the Buffalo Bills versus the New England Patriots, and the Bills won 35-31. So the Bills won 35-31. The Bills' leading passer is Josh Allen, who threw for 193 yards and 3 touchdowns. Their leading rusher is James Cook, who had 107 yards and 2 touchdowns. And their leading receiver is Khalil Shakir, who had 65 receiving yards. For the Patriots, their leading passer is Drake May, who threw for 155 yards and an interception. Their leading rusher is Travion Henderson, who rushed for 148 yards and 2 touchdowns. And their leading receiver is Mac Hollins, who had 41 receiving yards. So in this game, the Patriots just kind of ran the ball down the Bills' throat, and it looked like it worked. Like, Drake May really didn't do anything. It was mainly on Travion Henderson, who was winning them the game. And then towards the end, Josh Allen just put on his Superman cape, took over, and won the game for the Bills. It's going to be interesting on how this division finishes out. I still think it probably belongs to the Patriots, but especially with Mahomes and the Chiefs out, it feels like this AFC is wide open. I think the NFC still kind of belongs to the Rams, but the AFC is wide open, and there's not really a clear leader right now. And so overall, the Bills, you gotta be happy with a win. You're still fighting for the division, even though I think there's like a 90% chance the Patriots are gonna lock it up unless the Patriots just have a complete collapse. The next game is the New York Jets versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Jaguars won 48-20. So the Jaguars won 48-20. The Jaguars' leading passer was Trevor Lawrence, who threw for 330 yards and 5 touchdowns. Their leading rusher is Trevor Lawrence, who rushed for 51 yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver is Travis Etienne, who had 73 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. For the Jets, their leading passer was Brady Cook, who threw for 176 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 interceptions. Their leading rusher was Isaiah Davis, who had 58 rushing yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was Adine Mitchell, who had 58 receiving yards and a touchdown. So this game kind of ended exactly how it should have. The Jaguars are a good team, and the Jets aren't. Like, the Jets are one of the worst teams in the NFL, and they deserve to lose. Trevor Lawrence is at least playing really well, and so he does deserve credit for that, because I really didn't think he's been that good this season. I thought he's been very inconsistent, but the past several weeks he's been playing very, very well, and he deserves credit for that. Yes, again, little caveat, it's against the Jets, who are one of the worst teams in the NFL, but still, he did, kind of like with CJ Stroud and kind of like with Jalen Hurts, where they all deserve credit because they played really well, but they were all against bad teams, so it's hard to balance the credit, but overall, just the Jaguars won. They needed to win. They have the division, it seems like, pretty locked up, and they'll be a playoff team. I'm not too sure they're a Super Bowl team. We'll see how Trevor Lawrence keeps this up in the remaining games. And again, the Jets are just a disaster, so that's how that game went. The next game is the Washington Commanders versus the New York Giants, and the Commanders won 29-21. So the Commanders won 29-21. The Commanders' leading passer is Marcus Mariota, who threw for 211 yards and 1 touchdown. Their leading rusher was Bill Crosby-Merritt, who rushed for 96 yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver is Terry McLaurin, who had 69 receiving yards and a touchdown. For the Giants, their leading passer is Jackson Dart, who threw for 246 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading rusher is Tyrone Tracy, who rushed for 70 yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was Theo Johnson, who had 72 receiving yards. So in this game, kind of nothing happened. The big news is Jackson Dart got another concussion, which he's got a concussion in half of the games he's played in, which he just got to have a different play style. Because, I understand, running quarterback, very good, very effective, but he just needs to learn to slide or get out of bounds and just not try to get the extra yard, even though it's important. And maybe only try to get the extra yard when it's 3rd down. But don't do it every play, because what's going to happen to him is what happened to RG3, where plays decently well and then keeps getting injured. And so Jackson Dart just needs to play a different playing style. And then Marcus Mariota played pretty well. I hate to say it, because I understand Jayden Daniels is shut down for the season because they don't want him to get more injured, but Marcus Mariota has played significantly better than Jayden Daniels has in the games that they've played and been healthy in. So it does. I don't want to say Jayden Daniels is for sure the guy or for sure a bust, because he had a great rookie year and a terrible second year, but he was also injured for most of the year. But I do think there has to be a little bit cause for concern in Washington. Kind of reminds me of CJ Stroud, where it's great rookie year, next 2 years he's been terrible. And so overall, Giants kind of happy that they lost because they got to be happy they lost because even though they found their franchise guy, who if a team that already has a quarterback gets the number one pick, they're gonna be cooking. So they're gonna be trading away for lots of picks. Like if it's the Giants or the Titans that have the number one pick, they can trade it for a lot because that's what the Bears did. They traded the number one overall pick for a lot of players and picks, and then used those picks to get Caleb Williams and now build this really good team. So yeah, so if the Giants or Titans get the number one overall pick, they could use that and get a lot of capital to build a great team. The next game is the Cleveland Browns versus the Chicago Bears, and the Bears won 31-3. So the Bears won 31-3. The Bears' leading passer was Caleb Williams, who threw for 242 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their leading rusher was DeAndre Swift, who rushed for 98 yards and 2 touchdowns. And their leading receiver was Luther Burden, who had 84 receiving yards. For the Browns, their leading passer was Shedeur Sanders, who threw for 177 yards and 3 interceptions. Their leading rusher was Shedeur Sanders, who had 24 rushing yards. And their leading receiver is Isaiah Bond, who had 89 receiving yards. So the Bears dominated this entire game. Like the Browns just aren't good. Like it's kind of easy to say that. That's just kind of that. It is kind of funny. So there was 2 plays that went back to back where Caleb Williams threw an absolute laser to DJ Moore, but the ball should have been intercepted. It was in double coverage, and people are like, "Oh, look, it was a perfect ball." Like technically, it was a perfect ball in the sense that it reached DJ Moore, but it should have been intercepted. It literally went through the hands of 2 Browns defensive players, and then. Like the next play, Shedeur Sanders was throwing a ball, and he threw a literal perfect ball dot to, I believe, Jerry Jeudy. And Jerry Jeudy, it just bounced off his hands and got intercepted. And that's just crazy to me. And so overall, just the Bears look good and the Browns didn't. Like Shedeur Sanders hasn't played well. He had that one good game against the Titans, and then other than that, he's been terrible. So I'm not saying he's not the franchise guy, but he clearly hasn't established himself as a franchise guy just yet. So the Browns definitely will be in the market for a quarterback at the top of the draft if Shedeur Sanders doesn't significantly improve these past over the next 3 games. And then the Bears are looking good. Like I would say it's more into the Packers game, but I think they are pretty close to having the division locked up because the Packers are too injured to compete and the Lions are too far behind. So I think the Bears kind of have this division locked up. I'm not sure if they're a playoff team yet, or sorry, not a playoff team. I'm not sure they're a Super Bowl team yet, but they're definitely a playoff team and have been improving and playing really, really well. The next game is the Carolina Panthers versus the New Orleans Saints, and the Saints won 20-17. So the Saints won 20-17. The Saints' leading passer is Tyler Shough, who threw for 272 yards and a touchdown. Their leading rusher is Tyler Shough, who had 32 rushing yards. And their leading receiver is Chris Olave, who had 85 receiving yards and a touchdown. For the Panthers, their leading passer is Bryce Young, who threw for 163 yards and a touchdown. Their leading rusher is Bryce Young, who had 49 rushing yards. And their leading receiver is Jalen Coker, who had 60 receiving yards and a touchdown. So this was a really big back and forth game. Right at the end, there was a shocking move where they ran a QB draw, and Tyler Shough slid, and I can't remember who, but Panthers defender hit him right in the head, got 15 yards, and let the Saints kick the game-winning field goal. And the Panthers really needed this one because they're trying to beat the Buccaneers for the division, and they had a shot here. But right now, there's going to be 2 games, Panthers versus the Buccaneers, and the winner of those 2 games is going to win the division. Kind of as easy as that. And then the Saints. The issue with them is they're playing well enough where they're probably not going to get a top draft pick. And so maybe they give Tyler Shough another year because I think he has been playing well to get another year potentially. But also, I think Kellen Moore deserves a lot of credit because even Spencer Rattler was playing pretty decent, and it feels like wherever Kellen Moore goes, their quarterback plays pretty well. And so maybe if they just get a rookie, Kellen Moore can turn that guy into a pretty good quarterback. So I don't know. The Panthers they need to play better. It's weird. They beat good teams and lose to terrible teams. So I don't know what to say about that. But overall, the Saints won. And the next game is the Detroit Lions versus the Los Angeles Rams, and the Rams won 41-34. So the Rams won 41-34. The Rams' leading passer was Matthew Stafford, who threw for 368 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading rusher is Kyren Williams, who had 78 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. And their leading receiver is Puka Nacua, who had 181 receiving yards. For the Lions, their leading passer was Jared Goff, who threw for 338 yards and 3 touchdowns. Their leading rusher was Jahmyr Gibbs, who had 38 rushing yards. And their leading receiver was Amon-Ra St. Brown, who had 164 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. So, big news of this game is Davante Adams got injured. He is leading the NFL in touchdowns and the Rams' biggest red zone threat, but I don't think it really matters. I think even though they do need him a lot, I think they're making the playoffs for sure, and they got a playoff berth. And as long as he's healthy for the playoffs, these last few games, I understand the 1 seed is important, but the playoffs are even more important. And the Rams did that. And Matthew Stafford is still MVP of the NFL. He played really, really good. He had one kind of bad play where Aiden Hutchinson played it perfectly, where he intercepted him off of a screen. But other than that, he's played great. This offense has played great. The defense struggles quite a bit in this game, but honestly, I think that's more credit towards the Lions than fault towards the Rams. And then the Lions, their offense has played really good. I believe their offense is number 1 in the NFL, if I remember correctly still. And unfortunately, their defense is just so terrible. It keeps letting them down. And they might not make a playoff team or be a playoff team. So for the Lions, here's their best shot at making the playoffs is they need the Packers to win the division, because their best shot is the Packers beating the Bears for the division, then having the same record as the Bears and beating the Bears off of tiebreakers. I understand that's very, very unlikely because you need the Packers to, I believe, win out, and then the Bears to, I believe, lose out, and the Lions to win out. But that's what the Lions need to happen to make the playoffs, and it's going to be tough. But again, their offense is really good, but their defense is so bad, I don't think they deserve to be in the playoffs. And so we'll see what happens these coming weeks. But the Lions, it's rough. I think there's a really good shot that they're going to miss the playoffs. And that's crazy to me because last year the top 2 teams were the Chiefs were the top team in the AFC, and now they're out of the playoffs. And the Lions were the top team in the NFC last year, and now it looks like they're going to miss the playoffs too. And I wonder if that's ever happened where you had the top 2 teams in a conference last year miss the playoffs the following year. So overall, the Rams got to be very happy, really, really good. And then the Lions, the bad season continues. The next game is the Indianapolis Colts versus the Seattle Seahawks, and the Seahawks won 18-16. So the Seahawks won 18-16. The Seahawks leading passer is Sam Darnold, who threw for 271 yards. Their leading rusher is Zach Charbonnet, who rushed for 31 yards. And their leading receiver is Jackson Smith-Njigba, who had 113 yards. For the Colts, their leading passer is Philip Rivers, who had 120 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Their leading rusher was Jonathan Taylor, who had 87 rushing yards. And their leading receiver is Amir Abdullah, who had 32 receiving yards. So this game happened exactly how you thought it would be, where Philip Rivers, everyone was wondering, oh, what's he going to look like when he comes back? It was a lot of checkdowns, nothing risky, because I don't think he has the arm for it. It was basically like, okay, let the defense and the running game carry him to a victory and have him just not blow it. And again, that's credit. Like, if you can just not make stupid mistakes and not blow games, you can do that to win. But overall, they didn't look that great. The Seahawks, surprisingly, their offense kind of got shut down quite a bit by this Colts defense, which was pretty shocking to me. But other than that, I don't think Philip Rivers is likely to save the Colts season. Maybe he can. Again, it's going to be everyone else around Philip Rivers to lift him up as opposed to him lifting the team up. I would maybe give Riley Leonard a shot over Philip Rivers. I don't know. Maybe you give Philip Rivers one more game, and if he can't improve, then you start Riley Leonard, just because I really don't believe in Philip Rivers saving the season. But overall, the Seahawks, you needed this win to compete with the Rams and try to get the 1 seed. But overall, their offense got shut down, and it's going to be interesting how the Seahawks finish. But overall, this game went exactly how you expected it. The next game is the Green Bay Packers versus the Denver Broncos, and the Broncos won 34-26. So the Broncos won 34-26. The Broncos' leading passer was Bo Nix, who threw for 302 yards and 4 touchdowns. Their leading rusher was R.J. Harvey, who rushed for 65 yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was Courtland Sutton, who had 113 yards and a touchdown. For the Packers, their leading passer was Jordan Love, who threw for 276 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Their leading rusher was Josh Jacobs, who had 73 rushing yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was Matthew Golden, who had 55 receiving yards. So the big story of this game is the Packers and their injuries. So, this was catastrophic for the Packers. Not because they lost, but because of the injuries. So what happened is the Packers had this game in hand pretty much for most of the game, and then Jordan Love underthrew a pass to Christian Watson, which Surtain picked off, and that changed everything. So Micah Parsons tore his ACL, out for the year. Evan Williams I believe, sprained his MCL, will miss a couple of weeks likely. Josh Jacobs got injured, may or may not miss this week. Who else? Christian Watson had a chest injury. He's considered day-to-day. And right now, the Packers are kind of screwed in the sense where this is what the Colts are going through. Is the Colts and Packers both went all in for this year. And then the Colts quarterback got injured, and they're screwed. And now the Packers' leading player, best player on the team, Micah Parsons, is injured, and now they're kind of screwed because. Oh, and also Zach Tom, their right tackle, got injured, might miss a couple of weeks as well. So again, just everyone's injured on the Packers. They went all in, and they're screwed because this is what happened last year. Last year they were a good team, not a great team. They made the playoffs, got into the wild card, and got eliminated in the wild card, and that was probably fair. That was probably deserving because they were a good team, not a great team. This year they were a great team. They were one of the elite teams that could. And I said the only teams that can stop the Rams offense are probably the Seahawks and the Packers defense. And now with Micah Parsons gone, the Packers defense is just kind of screwed. They don't have very good corners, but they're okay with having bad corners because they're like, okay, our elite pass rush will open this up. And this is a stat I saw where the pass rush wins. Micah Parsons has 66 pass rush wins. Keep in mind, he's being double teamed like every single play. The rest of the Packers combined have 67. And so everyone getting one-on-ones like Rashawn Gary have just been disappointing. So I think the Packers are now a just good team where I think they will make the playoffs, but I think there's a good shot where they'll just get out in the wild card. And now with Micah Parsons' contract, they're going to lose a lot of key players, and they're not going to have the draft picks to replace them. So the Packers are just really screwed after this, and they've just been super unlucky with injuries. And then the Broncos. Bo Nix played really good. This is by far his best game of the year. And the Broncos defense is still an elite defense. So if Bo Nix can keep this up and continue to play well, then the Broncos can be a super team. They can win the Super Bowl this year. So Bo Nix deserves a lot of credit. He played extremely, extremely well. And we'll see where the Broncos go, but the main thing is the Packers are kind of screwed and are super far behind after this. The next game is the Tennessee Titans versus the San Francisco 49ers, and the 49ers won 37-24. So the 49ers won 37-24. The 49ers leading passer is Brock Purdy, who threw for 295 yards and 3 touchdowns. Their leading rusher is Christian McCaffrey, who rushed for 73 yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was Ricky Pearsall, who had 96 receiving yards. For the Titans, their leading passer is Cam Ward, who had 170 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their leading rusher is Tony Pollard, who had 104 yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was Gunnar Helm, who had 49 receiving yards and a touchdown. So in this game, I know I say this a lot, but it's like, oh wait, good team versus bad team. The 49ers are a good team and dominating the Titans. Brock Purdy played great, the 49ers played great as a whole, and their defense played really good. And that's really surprising to me about the 49ers defense because I kind of thought once they got all the injuries like Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, they're just going to be done. But no, they've played really, really well. And then Cam Ward, at least he's playing a little bit better. That's good. There was one really insane play where a play completely broke down, and then Jeffrey Simmons caught a touchdown, the defensive tackle for the Titans, so that was really, really nice. But other than that, like, the 49ers won, but they should have won, because the 49ers are good, and the Titans are really bad. The next game is the Minnesota Vikings versus the Dallas Cowboys, and the Vikings won 34-26. So the Vikings won 34-26. The Vikings' leading passer is J.J. McCarthy, who threw for 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading rusher is Aaron Jones, who rushed for 34 yards. And their leading receiver is Jordan Addison, who had 66 receiving yards. For the Cowboys, their leading passer is Dak Prescott, who threw for 294 yards, and that's it. And their leading rusher was Javonte Williams, who had 91 rushing yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was CeeDee Lamb, who had 111 receiving yards. So there's not much to say about this game because both these teams are out of the playoffs and this game really didn't matter. But luckily for the Vikings, J.J. McCarthy the past couple of weeks has been playing better. And that's important because for most of the season, he's been basically the worst quarterback in the NFL. And obviously they want him to be the franchise guy. They spent a first-round pick on him, and he has not been that so far. So if he continues to play better and improve in these last few games, maybe he can prove himself as a franchise guy. And overall, that's just kind of it, because the Vikings, they have the defense to win. They have the offensive line. They have the the receivers. They kind of have the running game. Running game's not the best. They're just missing the quarterback. And if J.J. McCarthy can outperform and play well, then they can be a playoff team next year. And then the Cowboys, just more disaster for them. Team's not playing well, but they're not a playoff team, so we'll see how they can use the draft picks they got and rebuild for next year. Well, the final game of the week is the Miami Dolphins versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Steelers won 28-15. So the Steelers won 28-15. The Steelers' leading passer was Aaron Rodgers, who threw for 224 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their leading rusher was Kenneth Gainwell, who had 80 rushing yards. And their leading receiver was DK Metcalf, who had 55 receiving yards and a touchdown. For the Dolphins, their leading passer was Tua, who threw for 253 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading rusher was Devon Achane, who had 60 rushing yards. And their leading receiver is Devon Achane, who has 67 receiving yards. So in this game, the Steelers are a playoff team and the Dolphins aren't. Like, the Dolphins are terrible. They're really struggling a lot, but the Steelers are back. Their defense is still, I think, just okay, but their offense over the past few weeks, Aaron Rodgers feels like he's back to himself and has been playing fantastic, and the offense has just been really, really good, and they deserve a lot of credit. Clearly, something was wrong, and they decided to revamp the offense, and it worked, and they've been doing it, and they've been playing really great. And then the Dolphins, they're just a disaster. I don't know if they'll keep Tua. I don't know if they'll keep Mike McDaniel. It's weird because I feel like they're playing good enough to not be fired, but they're not playing well enough to keep their jobs. So, I don't know. It's tough, but overall, Steelers, you gotta be happy because you're trying to win the division, and now you're, I believe, a game ahead of the Ravens, and you needed this win. So that's what happened in Week 15 of the NFL season. If you like this type of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button like Dozy Money, and I'll see you on the next one.